What to do? What are the anthropologists and archaeologists going to do in dealing with this information? And that is what I believe, what is sponsored, maybe consciously in some cases, unconsciously in other cases, what we could call the cover-up. The cover-up of the accomplishments of black people. Chancellor Williams wrote a book called The Destruction of Black Civilization. And in this book, he outlines 7 points as to why he feels that there was a cover-up.
Ignore. Just refuse to publish any facts of African history that don't go along with our racial theories.
We need to create a religious and a scientific doctrine so that African slavery won't appear that bad after all.
What we need to do is flood the world with new African histories that contain our European perspectives only.
Start renaming people and places. Replace African names with Arabic and European names. This will disguise their true black identity.
Let's change the criteria for defining race. For example, 1 drop of Negro blood in America makes you a Negro, no matter how light the skin.
Yes, and when reporting ancient African history, reverse the standard. No matter how dark the skin, woolly the hair, or thick the lips, you don't have to be a Negro.
When black contribution to civilization is too obvious, let's find a way to attribute it to outside white influences.
When all the ancient historians contradict your theory, we'll just discredit them.
Publishers were white university men, just like the white supremacists who were rewriting Egypt's history. Not only would these colleagues eagerly publish these lies, they'd also ensure anything to the contrary simply wouldn't be printed in books or magazines. The cool, rational analyses of men like Herodotus and Champollion had now been outlawed. The racists were about to rewrite history. These men created Egyptology, the first racial philosophy masquerading as a science. From now on, the Egyptians would no longer be the last word on their own world. White scholars would be the authorities now. They began the whitewashing of Egypt using the popular medium of that day, books. This is a scene of Egyptian women drawn by the Egyptians' own hands. See any pale skin, any blonde hair or blue eyes? But this was what the whites put in their books. This is an image of Princess Kemsit. Her name means the Black Lady. Notice she's being tended by white slaves. But in white books, they show the opposite. Queen T, King Tut's grandmother, and her husband Amenhotep III. You can guess what whites did with those two. And with the advent of movies, their propaganda now had the advantage of sound and moving pictures. No one realized it at the time, but whites were manufacturing their own image library. Since there were no images of white Egyptians, whites simply decided to fabricate their own. Every few years we see another big-budget propaganda piece. Different stories, but always the same lie. And after 100 years of this, the whites' manufactured images are now more familiar to the world than any of the ancient Egyptians' authentic pieces, which whites almost never show. In a world where most people get their information from TV, and they think that what they see in the movies is somehow real, is it any surprise that whites could use their media monopoly to sell the biggest lie in history? And so, black skin would be called tanned. The Egyptians would be reimagined as the same race as the vile Asiatics who they detested. White people would have dreadlocks and kinky hair now. The Nubians would be cast as the authentic blacks. The white writers would try to falsify a contrast between them and the newly minted white Egyptians. The white authors would talk about ancient Egypt, but they used terms meant to remind people of the world of the 19th century. This helped create a false association in the reader's mind between Egypt's mostly winning its wars with Nubia and the European conquest in Africa, as well as slavery in America. All they had to do was leave out 90% of the facts and keep repeating their revised version until it stuck. Here's an example of how they did it. This image is a reproduction that is shown in nearly every white-authored book on Egypt, Tut slaying the Nubians. Whites like to point out that some of the Nubians are jet black. But they always conveniently omit that most of the Nubians are shown as being the same reddish-brown color as Tut and having red hair like Ramses II. And not one of those books will dare show the image on the other side of this funerary box found in Tut's tomb, because it shows Tut riding his chariot over whites who don't look anything like him in form or color. And if this picture of Tut warring with a handful of Nubians who look just like him is proof that the Egyptians hated blacks, then what does it mean when Ramses III rides over an entire ocean of Caucasoids? For whites, it means, no way in hell are we going to print this.
In 1997, the Art Bell radio program aired an interview with Richard Hogan regarding the recent discovery of a new room under the pyramids through a secret shaft under the Sphinx. Inside the room was a statue of a black man. This information was suppressed but leaked out through the testimony of an eyewitness guard. Following are excerpts from this program. Notice that the Europeans wrestle with their denial of the black African truth, even in the face of new undeniable evidence.
What this guard reported was that on October 20th, Farouk El-Baz, the same man who picked the Apollo landing sites on the moon according to the Orion-Sirius connection,
Yes.
and two English-speaking Europeans carrying a large aluminum case entered the Great Pyramid that morning for 3 hours on October 20th. They proceeded to put a robot up the shaft and a camera with a fiber optic connection under the crack in the door. They proceeded to look through to find what was inside a chamber, and there is a chamber back there, according to the story, which is about 3 meters by 2.5 meters in size.
Yes.
There is a statue in this room.
A statue.
Of a black man.
A black man.
Seated, looking up the shaft toward the star Sirius at the Meridian crossing.
Wow.
And there is more.
There's more.
Isn't this getting to be interesting?
It is, yes. Now, let's define black. 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 Here's a fax from Jerry in Clovis, California. My teacher, a colleague, told me the Egyptians were very dark Caucasians. I guess this new discovery proves it to be true. They were not black. Told me the Egyptians were very dark Caucasians. I guess this new discovery proves it to be true. They were not black. So, do you want to stick with your description of a black man, or would this be a dark-skinned Egyptian, or is that too close a call to make?
No, the description was a black man.
A black man.
Yeah, yeah.
Has made a statement not long ago, which baffled. I'm quoting this in my last book because it's very topical for the subject I'm discussing, which is the black African origins. He actually said, when there was a because there was a claim, in fact, quite the opposite, that Tutankhamun might have been of black origins, and he said the most absurd thing. He said, Egyptians are not Africans. Egyptians are Africans. I mean, even today, Egypt is in Africa. Now I know why he said it, because he equates the word African with black. And therefore to him, by saying Egypt or Egyptians are Africans means they're black. Now, you don't have to go too far in Egypt. All you have to do is go in the south of Egypt, in Nubia, and the population is clearly a black population. And even in Cairo, I mean, you walk around the streets in Cairo, you will see a whole variety of races. extremely dark black. I was recently at the camel market in Abu Ruwash near Cairo, and the Bedouins that come from Middle Egypt are actually pure black, beautiful people. I've put some pictures on my Facebook, by the way, and and then you meet lighter colors, and they can go almost Caucasian, white Egyptians, but there is an enormous hodgepodge that took place in Egypt. Especially in recent times. But there is an original strain, there is no doubt. I mean, on occasion you fall on an original strain, especially if you go in places that have not been touched, like the oases in the Western Sahara, which we should talk a little bit about this because there's been some recent news, recent finds there lately. So, I think he's not doing, first of all, giving the right messages to the world as an academic. To politicize science is a mistake.
Epistrop Peace.